I'm very curious to know what you say about LaMelo Ball because he's injured again, calf strain, right? I think he's dealing with.
Yep.
I mean, the Hornets are just pick a name and tell me who's not injured at this point. Brandon Miller, who is playing enough minutes to make Tom Thibodeau blush at the moment. But LaMelo's counting stats are fascinating, but a lot of the improvements that we saw at the beginning of the season, they're like not the same. So I'm just kidding. Like, where do you land on this?
So have we not talked about him yet? Like the kind of the give and take of his pre-injury part of the year?
Right. So the question you posed it to me, you said people are wondering if LaMelo Ball has become basically the most overrated player in the NBA.
And that struck me because I was just looking at like the 3-point volume was insane. And he tailed off a little bit before injury, but to get up 13 threes a game is like that. And if you're hitting him at a league average clip, which he's fairly close to, that's such a huge value add. And the passing and the offensive orchestration, the usage rate was on pace at one point to be like the third highest in the like modern era. So like, but then, so the pushback was always kind of 2-pronged. One is just like, he is an unserious defender and team player, which is easy to say about him because he does play with like such a carefree, his step backs are unlike anyone else's because they almost just feel like, fuck it. Like every time, they're just like little flicks and like shoot it off 1.5 feet.
Stay the same. Like I'm not putting him on the same level of these players, but I don't like when we try to use demeanor as a metric for commitment to where you could tell he's, but like you could say the same thing about Luka or Jokic.
Maybe so. I think, I think that's true. Maybe less for Jokic than Luka.
Well, because Jokic is always like bleeding and has scratches on him, but it just he makes things look so like he's not fired up after these plays where he gets like he can get off those ridiculous like sweeping 2-point shots.
Yeah,
and Luka with the step back too. Those look and James Harden even like they feel like they take more effort now that he's older, but like peak James Harden, it just kind of felt like it looked easy. And is that do we penalize players for that now?
I would say I'm not making this argument. I think, well, here's what I'd say. If the reason you think he's unserious is like maybe some of the like stupid driving stuff like a couple years ago, and the fact that like this is where you're wrong, you would be wrong if you're making this criticism that he like smiles a lot and like seems to be really having a good time. So like therefore he doesn't care. Like that's not a great argument. What I would say, you do have a leg to stand on if you cite defensively, for example, he's just never in a stance. Like he's just standing up and if a guy goes by him, he reaches. He'd fouled out. I think Chris Herring for ESPN had this. Like he fouled out like 3 out of 6 games at one stretch and was fouling out early and it was dumb reaches. It was like lazy plays. It was just unserious defensive play. Like that, I think is real. And if that bothers you, and if you also cite the stuff that says like, yeah, he makes the Hornets offense way better, but when he's on the floor, that offense is still like objectively not good. It, it doesn't rank high enough to make the argument that like, oh, he's this incredible driver of offense. It's really just relative to like how much better things are than compared to when he's not on the floor. Mm-hmm. I'm receptive to that stuff. Like the defensive, just like not giving a shit. And the like, does he raise the offense to a level that's high enough to like anoint him as, worthy of this crazy high usage rate? Those are good arguments, I think, or at least compelling. I still think you have to weigh that against the sheer volume of the stuff he's doing as a scorer and the load that he has to carry with a bad team around him. Like,
and that's what's tough.
That's what makes him tricky, right? I think I'm more impressed than not, but I am receptive to the stuff that suggests like this actually isn't as meaningful as some of the numbers individually for him make it look like.
Very quickly, what do you make of the notion that he hasn't actually gotten better, that this is more of a volume and approach thing?
I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think the ability to do stuff at a higher volume level means in a lot of cases that you have gotten better, right? Like you know what I mean? Like that, maybe that's a cop-out answer, but not everybody gets to play that high usage of a role. Mm-hmm. And he's done it with good enough efficiency that you'd put him in a category of like, I don't know how many other guys even could do that, like have the ability to do that.
The Hornets offense, 53rd percentile with him on the court. The half court offense is in the 35th percentile, which can be a red flag. I just wonder if that's the returns of LaMelo, what is the player you put on this Hornets team with the availability, the injury concerns and all?
Exactly.
That is a lot better. And I think you're getting into the Jokic, Luka Doncic, of course, but like who's if you put I'm asking if you put Anthony Edwards on this Hornets team, are they a better offensive team?
Yeah, how different, or is it of
Yeah.
Trae Young or something? Someone that we have seen drive a really good offense. Like, is it meaningfully different? We can't answer that, but no, that I think that's the right counter. At least if you're going to impugn him offensively, I don't think that's necessarily the way to go. I think it's the defense as much as anything.
I want to shout out Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. I know we're seeing an extension of kind of what happened last year with more self-creation, but he leads the Grizzlies in scoring, and they're a top 5 offense right now. They can still be, and we saw it in their loss to the Mavericks. That half-court machine is very rickety, including Jaren Jackson Jr., whose release remains, it's tough to watch. I'm not gonna lie. But he's shooting 60% on floaters versus 44% last season. And so I think the floor opening up a little bit when John Morant's there, but John Morant's missed time this season, and the Grizzlies are not this billboard for pristine spacing. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. has kind of continued to build upon what he did last year. And I think it's exciting for Grizzlies fans and that team in general to see him be this player in, I guess I would say, closer to what the normal team is supposed to be when you look at who has played this year.
Yeah. I think I made a wild prediction early, like before the season, that he would finish higher in MVP rankings than Ja, which was mostly because I thought Ja would miss time. Feel pretty good about that one. I think Jaren Jackson.
I predicted the Hornets with Bobcat. That was one of my bold predictions. So hey, right on schedule.
Evan Mobley. Okay, so this is interesting because I think in passing, I mentioned, and I want to pull the numbers up now, that like there again, I keep making like straw man cases, but there was like some pushback on, has he made the leap? Because after like a pretty impressive start statistically, the numbers, points, rebounds, assists per game had kind of like dropped down. Like the 3-point volume hadn't like spiked. He's at 2 attempts per game, which is good if you average 1.2 last year. But, a couple more points per game. His assists are down. His rebounds are down per game despite more minutes. And like, I guess if that's where you wanted to stop, you'd say like, how different is he? And then you'd just be wrong, because the way Evan Mobley is playing, you just have to be watching him, I guess, right? Which is like sometimes a sort of shitty thing to say, but like the physicality that he plays with, especially on offense, and the level of aggression is just like that wasn't there before. I think part of it is he looks physically much stronger, and his ability to just move guys is just something that he didn't have, last season. Like you go back to that Knicks series in the postseason where he just couldn't finish through contact, right? Like he would be the guy on the roll that would either have to make the pass or finish oversized, and he just couldn't do it. And that's, one of the main reasons the Cavs like, oh, well, I don't know about this team now. So his finishing through contact, I know you have a stat, 90th percentile right now. He's averaging about 3 more drives per game, and the nature of the drives are different. They're just like aggressive is like not, it's like predatory. Like he's hunting contact. And I caught the last game I saw of the Cavs. I caught myself thinking like, cause he did look bigger in the upper body, and he would just get a shoulder into guys and put them, too low to contest. And he just dunks now off the dribble all the time. And I started thinking like, is this going to be a thing where he becomes like Giannis, and he has like 3 plays a game where he just like doesn't make a move, but just catches the ball close enough to the basket to where he just can go through people to dunk? And like,
oh, wow.
That's new. Like now Giannis is an insane physical comp. Like there's sort of never been anybody like that, but the things that Mobley is doing now call that to mind, I think, which is like, go back a year and a half. You would never in a million years have thought like the main improvement he would make is just the use of physicality. But that I think to me has been the biggest standout for him this year.
I had to hit B-ball index for having those stats, but 90th percentile in finishing through contact, when he's never ranked higher than the 64th percentile in his career,
and wouldn't try it. Yeah. Like that's the other thing. He wouldn't like his comfort and like his almost like desire to like find contact is just, that makes you a different player.